Vietnamese. My name is Beata Tsosie-Pen. I'm from Hapo Winge, also known as Santa Cruz Pueblo, New Mexico. And my story with my activism in this work comes about, it starts before I was born, and I have to recognize what my relatives went through when the labs came into our area. When they came into our, just to clarify, Santa Cruz Pueblo is about 20 minutes away from Los Alamos National Laboratory. And, but it's hard for our people now, I think, to remember a time when the labs didn't exist. And I like to really think about that time as, we were largely agrarian and ranching communities. We were deeply connected with the Jemez Plateau, which is where the labs are located. It's the site of our ancestral homelands. And so a lot went on before I was even born. And now that I look back on it, I realize how it created this kind of polarization between the people as far as when economics came into the picture. And I think with poor communities, and I use that word poor lightly because I think we should be allowed to define our own definitions of what poor means and what poverty means, because a lot of times we get kind of blocked into being labeled that way when really, who decides what that is, right? Who tells us we're poor until we realize it? I think our ancestors didn't even realize they were poor until they were started having to be compared with, all this neighbor out down the street has paved driveways and televisions and all this stuff all of a sudden, right? That because people started having this alternate income, they were aware of for the first time. And so it's a struggle for me growing up by the labs because so much of our communities is economically dependent on this place for income. And it's not by choice, it's not by choosing to be in direct conflict with our values as community and people, even though it is in contradiction with those values, which is, family, community, being able to sustain ourselves on our own food and land, respect for our environment. These are all values I think that a lot of us hold, and it's a contradiction having to work at a place that has a mission that it does, that it silenced a lot of people in my community. And I would just ask that people can kind of hold that we can get polarized into, like they were talking earlier about thinking only about jobs, but it's really more complicated than that when there really needs to be something about transformation and thinking about alternate ways of existing in ways that are life-affirming. And so with that being said, I can, growing up on the Pueblo, I never had any consciousness or knowledge about what was even happening up on the hill. It wasn't until I moved home with my family and my children about 4 years ago back to the Pueblo that I was out walking one morning down by the Bosque, down by Black Mesa, and I heard the explosions from the high explosive detonations, and it was just this intense rumbling through the canyons, and I thought it was thunder at first, but it was the bombs they were testing and detonating. And it was just this realization hit me of what that place was all those years, and I couldn't believe how I had gone my whole life without any conscious realization of the activities that were happening there. And and it was at that point that my first instinct was just to run home and move my family away from there. And then my second instinct was to pray about it and see how I could help and get involved. And so I prayed about it, and shortly after was offered a job with a local nonprofit called Teo Women United, where I started working facilitating a community focus group around Llano issues and around nuclear weapons, contamination in our lands, and what it really was it would also answer my prayers in the sense that we were educating each other, because we weren't taught any of these things in school, and we weren't taught any of these things in college, and so now we were having to come together and educate ourselves and each other around what these issues were, all the acronyms. I mean, it's too much for, if you don't have any background or it's not your job to really comprehend what's happening and what these issues mean. And I think it's intentional. And we started just by bringing our experiences to the table, and what we're doing now is sharing stories with each other. And everyone had stories of family that worked there and got sick. Everyone had stories about places that we lost access to, or how it's affecting our community spiritually and dividing us politically. And it goes back to a lot of conversations about conquest and colonialism. And, you know, as myself as a Native person, it was a big realization, like, to realize, like, all the family that I grew up with, a lot of my elders who were never able to fully pass on the language and knowledge and traditions because they died of cancer. And, you know, when did this illness start to come into our communities? It's never been looked at. We've never had any kind of health studies. We've never had any kind of quality health care in our communities. Our health care is administered by the military. We need to talk about ongoing militarization of Native peoples, and, you know, as one of the root causes of these issues we're talking about. I think back to times when all these policies were being made and just the blatant environmental racism that was taking place when they were deciding where to locate these places. You know, Trinity was not supposed to have had any people there. Sandia Labs and Los Alamos are located at both ends of the Rio Grande, and what's in between all the Indian pueblos. You know, and don't tell me that that wasn't intentional. And so it was back then at these times when it was blatant, and now it's more, they're here. And from my understanding, the labs were never supposed to be a permanent place up there, but it ended up being that. And recently it's been pretty devastating in my homelands, because last year with the Las Conchas fire, I had to watch while millions of dollars of resources went into protecting the labs from fire, and my homelands of Santa Clara Pueblo was burned. And just to see, you know, it's something when we think about Mother Nature trying to tell us something when this place has been threatened by fire 3 times already. And so 80% of my pueblo was destroyed. We lost our watershed. Where we usually were gardening, we're not able to garden there now. We've lost access to the streams where we would go to do our ceremonies, but for our dances and purify ourselves, we can't no longer go there because of the devastation from the fire. So it's affecting our communities on a lot of different levels, just that in itself. And now it's like, not only do we have that to heal from, and all our resources are kind of focused around that, but there's still this ongoing issue of them wanting to make this facility more permanent through facilities such as the CMRR. And you know, it's a big issue for us, and I don't think that until we can have like comprehensive communication and education with the local communities, and we can involve the local communities on a level that doesn't feel like they have to choose between their livelihood and their values. I don't think we should be asked to make that choice, but it's definitely conversations that we need to be having. And you know, as for myself, I'll probably continue with this work for the rest of my life, just because I know now, you know, and it's kind of like that ignorance is bliss saying that once you kind of go into there, you realize how far it goes and how complex it is, and what we can do to just continue educating ourselves and doing the proactive work that kind of balances this constant kind of unempowering work of dealing with policy and government and that kind of stuff. But, you know, we're making gardens, we're saving seeds, we're relearning our languages, we're bringing our children back and educating them, we're relearning our traditional ways, we're rebuilding our relationship to water and air and land and maintaining our prayers to those sacred sites. Even if we don't have access to them anymore, we're still sending our intentions that way. And so these are all really like proactive things that we could be doing to nurture each other and take care of each other while we're doing this kind of other constant work. And so that's kind of some of the stuff I've been involved with.